This is an area of significant cultural importance, and we need to be careful and respectful. That said, we do not want the cost of archaeological work to be a barrier to the people of Lytton. This work will identify and preserve any findings in the area and will further our reconciliation and collaborative resource management with the Ntlaka'pam Nation. The last step to this important work is site remediation. Soil remediation will remove any contaminants from the ground and restore the landscape into a safe site for the village and residents to rebuild on. To help meet these milestones quickly, the province is also funding a work site with temporary housing for up to 30 staff consultants and construction workers who are going to be doing a lot of this work on the ground. As well, we have dedicated an Assistant Deputy Minister to work hand in hand with the village of Lytton in ensuring that things move as they are supposed to. Clearly, there's a lot of work ahead, and we're backing the community to get this done and get it done right. The funding announced today will clear the way for the rebuilding of Lytton. In closing, I'd like to say that the province continues to be there for the community of Lytton, and as partners in this recovery, we will continue our support. Thank you, and I'll now pass it on to Parliamentary Secretary Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Farnworth. I'm very pleased to be here today to celebrate this hopeful news for Lytton. It has certainly been a difficult road for everyone in the community, and we know people are eager to rebuild and get home. Today's announcement will help mitigate future delays and will help everyone in the community move forward together, faster through this recovery. As recovery liaisons for the province, Parliamentary Secretary Jennifer Rice and myself have visited Lytton and have been working closely with their Mayor and Council. We've also been attending regular town halls with the community, listening and bringing their feedback back to Minister Farnworth, Cabinet and Ministry staff. We have certainly heard from community and echoed by the Mayor that there is a desire for more clarity around what the process will look like to get back to swinging hammers and rebuilding. So we want to assure the people of Lytton that we will be continuing to clarify and support that need. It's so important that governments at all levels work in partnership in times of great need or struggle. And so I'm grateful for Lytton's spirit and determination to build back their community. I hope that today's announcement will reassure the people of Lytton that despite challenges, the province is here to help support the community wherever and whenever obstacles arise. And together we are making progress. We look forward to moving into this stage of recovery that will bring us closer to getting those shovels into the ground. Thank you, and I'll pass it over to Parliamentary Secretary Jennifer Rice.
Thank you. I want to echo Parliamentary Secretary Russell's enthusiasm for this significant milestone. We know the community has been through a lot since last summer, including several setbacks along the way. We experienced a long, difficult wildfire season, followed by unprecedented fall flooding. Throughout these past months, it's been a privilege to work directly with the community and their leaders in our work as provincial recovery liaisons. The work and funding we're announcing today is a huge step in the right direction on the path to rebuilding Lytton. This will build on other supports the province has provided for Lytton's recovery. We recently provided $9.3 million in funding to support the village with its ongoing operations and recovery. $2.1 million of the funding is supporting the village through 3 years of core operations so they can focus on planning, recovery, and rebuilding, rather than on generating revenue. And we're directly funding several positions in Lytton's recovery team to provide the community with the personnel needed through the next steps. This includes a project manager who is overseeing key work streams on debris removal and water systems. This previous funding and getting Lytton the support they require on the ground has gotten to us where we are today. And I'm so proud to see that work come together with this new announcement, which will greatly accelerate the recovery. We all want to get Lytton rebuilt as soon as possible. And with the work that starts tomorrow, we're on track to do just that. Thank you, and I'll now turn it back to Minister Farnworth.
be accepting questions from the media now. I will remind the media to press *1 to enter the queue. You will be limited to one question and one follow-up. Our first question today comes from Les Lane, Times columnist.
Well, thanks. Minister, 250 days as is continually raised in the legislature with not much in the way of any sign of progress there. Can you isolate a reason or it seems like an excessive amount of time to get going, even if you discount the rainfall over the fall. I mean, BC rebuilt 2 major highways over that period of time, and they can't seem to get anything started on this village in, as I said, 250 days. What's the reason for that?
There's been a significant amount of work done in terms of the rebuilding. A lot of it has been work that needs to be done before the actual rebuilding can take place. So first off, the site was very much a toxic site, and so there has to be dealing with the toxic materials that were there. There had to be a lot of sifting done that was done on by a volunteer basis in organizations to try and recover what personal artifacts remain for people. At the same time, working very closely with the village of Lytton in terms of their capacity to function as a community. We put staff resources to them, brought in an acting or a new administrative officer for the community, working to ensure that they're able to deal with their bylaws. And the reality is, in terms of the weather event, it had a significant impact on the timeline in terms of the debris removal. Because a lot of the debris removal has to go to specialized locations. At the same time, on the existing road that was available, there are significant load limits on that particular highway route. So there have been many challenges on a community that was completely and totally destroyed. That being said, we're now at a point where we are able to make significant progress in terms of the rebuilding of the community so that people can return to it.
Les, do you have a follow-up?
Look, some people are suggesting that, as you said, the community is completely and totally destroyed. It didn't have a lot of capacity to begin with as a small village, and the leadership was just as traumatized as everyone else was. Should there have been a more direct provincial control or, I don't know, administratorship or more direct guidance in all those countless decisions that have had to be made over the last several months?
We've been working very closely with the village of Lytton. I know that in terms of when you said administrative or trusteeship, there's not much of a precedence for that in this province or anywhere for that matter that I am aware of. The best way forward is to work with the community on the ground. That's why my 2 colleagues, the parliamentary secretaries, were tasked with liaisoning with the community, which they have done. Part of the rebuilding process, of course, must involve the residents and how they would like to see their community rebuilt, along with the council, in terms of what is their direction and their future, the future that they see for Lytton. All of those things are critical if this rebuilding is to take place successfully. It's not a case for the province to come in and start dictating this is how your community is going to be rebuilt. What's critical is that the local people are involved. And being able to deal and address with the concerns that we are dealing with today, such as, how many buildings how many individuals there are insured, how many are uninsured, the relationship with the First Nations band as well, also involving the federal government. All of those things are critical components. So the approach, has it taken time? Yes, it has. Recovery nearly always does. But we're on the right track, and this announcement today is going to significantly allow that recovery to pick up at a very rapid pace.
Our next question today comes from Mandy Wen, Fairchild Radio.
Hi, Minister Farnworth. I have a question regarding the Lytton Chinese History Museum, which was also destroyed by the wildfire last year. So I'm wondering, is the province planning to rebuild the Lytton Chinese History Museum? Thank you.
Certainly, that's one of the important aspects of Lytton. As I've said in my remarks, this is an important heritage site, not just in terms of First Nations heritage, but also the broader community, and in particular, the Chinese community. There was some significant work in trying to recover artifacts from that site, and obviously that's something we want to work with going forward.
Mandy, do you have a follow-up?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you very much. For the next question, we go to Joel Ballard, CBC.
Yes, hello, Minister. Thanks for taking my question. I am wondering if you can give us a clearer timeline. I know in the short term, work starts tomorrow, but in the long term, what we're looking at, especially for people who have lost their homes and are waiting to find out when they will eventually be able to move back into their community.
Well, the debris removal is the critical start of that process. So it's starting with the municipal structures, and then is being coordinated with the fully insured, and the under and uninsured residents in terms of that debris removal. And we would like to see that take place as quickly as possible. That being said, of course, that's one of the reasons why we're picking up the cost of the archaeological work and coordinating that work. But we want to see this move as quickly as possible, and that's why the resources are in today's announcement to do just that.
Joel, do you have a follow-up?
Yes. Do you mind clarifying the amount that the province is providing now? I know you announced the $18.4 million. I'm just wondering if all the other announcements you made around funding construction work site, living site, is that all included in the $18.4 million, or is there more financially on top?
That's in the $18.4 million. At the same time, that's over and above the additional 9.3 that we have already announced, which was to assist the village of Lytton in terms of its recovery, its recovery as an administrative unit, but also with some of the other infrastructure that's there.
Our final question for today comes from Shannon Waters, BC Today.
Hi, I actually have a question on another issue for the minister. Back in 2019, when British Columbians were still learning in bits and pieces sort of what had gone on in terms of alleged misspending and misappropriation of public funds at the BC legislature by the former clerk, whose trial has just wrapped up, you said that you were looking at making changes to make the legislature subject to FOI, make things more transparent and make it easier for everyday British Columbians and journalists to get access to information about what's going on in the BC legislature. Whatever happened to that effort?
Well, we've actually done that in terms of increased transparency and your ability to get information. And in fact, you're able to access more information now than ever before. So, for example, all spending in the clerk's office, all spending in the speaker's office is now public information, and you don't have to file an FOI request to get it.
Shannon, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, have you spoken to the independent officers who were calling for very specific sort of amendments to be made to legislation? Now, some of those practices and procedures within the House have changed, but the calls from the independent officers remain the same. Having spoken to some of them back in January, they'd still like you to make the changes that you promised to make back in 2019. Is that something you plan to do?
There are still some changes that we would like to make, but we also need to make sure that the changes don't impact the standing of the legislature. So currently, for example, the independent officers of the legislature are independent officers of the legislature, and if you were to make any additional changes, it would be to make sure that that role stays in that way, that it does not make them what would be known as independent officers of the Legislative Assembly, which would mean that the legislature would be subordinate, and that's not how our system works. That being said, we're quite open to making additional changes in terms of improving transparency, and we will continue to do that. We have a lot of work as government, and that work will continue. But what we were particularly clear on. And given what we saw back in 2019 with the results that came in terms of what was happening in the clerk's office, for example, we moved very quickly to ensure that there is full transparency in that area, and so that now you are able to access receipts and spending in the clerk's office and in the speaker's office without having to access freedom of information. It is all online. And so, I think that's what the public wanted to know, that they could, see those things, and you can do just that.